Well, welcome everyone to the Instructional Policy Committee meeting. We are joined here by Mrs. Gijic, our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and Mrs. Ebright, who is our Learning Specialist for all of our digital resources. So it's kind of a cool position to have in the district, to have a digital learning specialist. And she is, she does a little bit of everything where we need all of the expertise in graduation. She does a huge amount for our graduation policies and procedures, and that's why she's here tonight. But she also is responsible for all of that professional development that you heard at the beginning of the year with the conference, the HUVA conference, where everybody got to select over that 2 weeks time. Marcy had a huge part of the success of that. So we're glad to have her here. On our agenda, normally we start with going through some of the items that are going to board to make sure that I brief you on some of the instructional items that are coming and get your feedback on some of those, and we kind of prepared for those. But because Mrs. Gijic and Mrs. Ebright's here, I'm going to let them go first. So we're going to start with, on our agenda, under our other agenda items, we have graduation seals, and then we'll hold on the reopening teams because we'll let Mrs. Ebright and Mrs. Gijic talk about the graduation seals, and then I'm actually going to have Mrs. Gijic talk about some of the awards that we've gotten since she's here before she clicks off. So let me give you just a little background on the graduation seals first, because if you're like our staff, this feels like about 20 years ago, we talked about and had our new graduation policy and some administrative guidelines that we brought. And that was actually on March 20th when we went back and looked. Now, if you can imagine what was happening in our world, March 17th is when we shut down. Somehow we had a board meeting on March 20th. And that was the evening. We had already, as instructional policy, we had already been looking at all of the graduation policies. If you remember, we combined graduation discussions with the IB presentation in the conference room on the second floor. And so we had been through that whole journey, kind of winter and spring. Somehow on March 20th, we got everything approved and signed off on. But there was one piece that ODE still hadn't finalized their guidance on, and so we knew we had one last piece to do in preparation for this school year, and that is the graduation seals. The state has graduation seals, and Mrs. Ebright's going to show you what the list of what the state seals are. But then locally, we get 3 of our own seals. And Mrs. Mansfield and Mrs. McKittrick, you saw drafts of these back in March, but then we just kind of held off until we were able to make sure we saw the ODE guidance, the final guidance, before we brought it back. And we have put together, we're finalizing just a handbook that will go out to all of the counselors now, and our digital system of collecting all the information. So tonight, this isn't anything that's going to have to go back to board, because we did all that we needed to do board policy wise, but we wanted to show you the final draft. It's still a draft. That was funny. We'll show you it's still in draft form, because I wanted to make sure you all had an opportunity to offer any kind of last feedback before we roll it out officially to all of our staff. So let me first show you the administrative guideline. Let me cast this to you so you can see this, and then I will turn it over to Mrs. Gijic and Mrs. Ebright. So this is the final piece to the puzzle. When back in March, we talked about this last part of the graduation seals. And the State Board of Education has this whole first list of seals here. And then we're allowed to have, that's all the state seals. And then we are allowed to have 3 local diploma seals. And we chose to have the community service seal, the student engagement seal, and the fine arts seal. And so that's all this says, is this is what we're going to have. And then we're here tonight to be able to show you how we're looking at the criteria that students would have to complete to earn the 3 local seals. So I'm going to turn it over. I think Mrs. Ebright, you'll present your screen, and Mrs. Gijic, why don't you start us off?
So the teams have been meeting prior to the COVID opportunity and finalized in the midst of COVID the local seal criteria. And Marcy is a phenomenal talent, and I think you'll see that. We used the guidance from the state and then developed our own little handbook around the 3 ways for local seals, because you have to have either 2 state or 1 local and 1 state seal, 2 seals as a part of that graduation criteria. So Marcy, if you will share the roadmap, and then we can take a step back into the handbook. So we're going whole to part.
So, sure. Do you want me to pick up from here, Mrs. Gijic?
Yes.
Let me see if I can.
Blow that up
Yeah.
That'd be great. There we go. Thank you.
So, we spent a lot of time last year as the information was being released around what these permanent graduation pathways would look like, specifically the seals that students would need to earn from the state and what our local seals could look like. And design teams met in whole groups and small groups to really think through that process all year long next year, right up until March 17th, I think was our last meeting that we had. So last whole group meeting. Continued the work over the summer, but what you walk away from was that students' first, second, and third things that they need to do moving forward to graduate are to earn those credits, demonstrate competency, and that's that state testing piece. And then third, they need to earn at least 2 seals. And as Mrs. Gijic said, 1 must be one of the state-defined seals, and the second one could be another state-defined seal, or it could be a local seal of our own defining. So that's what this first, second, third credits, competency, and seals. We're calling it CCS. So they're easy to remember. So if you look down this third column, the lists of seals are there. And I'm sure you can think of seals in this list that you think that you might have been interested in earning, or students who would lend themselves really easily to a military enlistment seal or citizenship seal because they're great in social studies and that's a passion of theirs. Or they're ready for college because they have those remediation free score ACT and SAT tests. And then we get down to, our 3 defined local seals, like the community service, fine and performing arts, or student engagement. So students have a variety of choices of seals that they can earn, and really customizable to whatever pathway, interest, and experience that they're going through. It's great flexibility that the state has offered for kids. Instead of that one size fits all, they have all these opportunities to earn these seals and demonstrate this readiness. So that's sort of where, we're at. That was the guidance from the state. And then the second page of this document. And this is sort of our, summary for family and parent communication, because the document, the handbook that came from the state that Ms. Jujic mentioned is 54 pages. We didn't think anybody would want to dig through 54 pages, especially if I know I'm not interested in the military seal or technology seal, and that I have other ones I'm interested in pursuing. I just want to get to the meat of what that seal is about. So there's a seal summary page here that walks families and students through the very, very high level, what is this seal about and how do you get it? All of them are rigorous components where it might take them multiple years in high school to earn all the hours or the activities that finally earn that seal. And that's broken down more closely either in the state handbook or our local handbook. But this is just our high level roadmap so that I can see, what does it mean when I earn an honors diploma, a military seal, a college ready seal, science, and so forth. So this sort of high level roadmap, we call it a roadmap because there's a little road in the background. See if I can zoom out a little bit. You can see the road a little better if I zoom out. So a one pager back to back with our seal summary, the state seals, and then our local seals defined. This, as Ms. Jujic said, is sort of our high level piece. And to dig a little closer, there is the state handbook from the state. So you can look at all those state level seals and dig into what are all the criteria for each of those. But what we have done is we defined our local seals and those design teams was what would it take for us to earn those 3 local seals was to create our own handbook. And it is in draft form right now. As I said, until you had a chance to sort of look at it and give some feedback. And basically is a more detailed view around what it would take to earn the community service seal, the student engagement seal, or the fine and performing arts seal. Questions so far that I could stop and pause there for before we go any further?
So far, so good.
Yeah, none from me, thanks.
Okay, great. Do we need a closer look at what each of these seals entails to actually earn?
Yeah, that would be great. Why don't you, if you could zoom it in again so that they could see and just highlight the criteria that we'll be using so that they have a good sense of what the 3 require.
Correct. So the community service seal is, and we researched what was going on with other schools. So we feel like this is a fair balance of hours. It's not too little, too much. It's somewhere right in the middle around what's going on around the state of Ohio when they were designing their hours of community service that would be needed. That throughout a student's high school time, they would earn up to at least 30 hours in order to get this seal. And it has to be a high quality community service. So this is where they're volunteering and engaged. It needs to be a partner that's approved either through their school or an approved list so that they're volunteering. So, just babysitting their kid brother isn't volunteering work. So there has to be this high quality aspect to it. And the partner also needs to log off or sign off that the student completed those hours. And so students would keep track of those. They would use their career cruising software to track and log those hours throughout high school. And once they've satisfied all the hours or more, they would be able to turn that log in, and then that would code them to receive the community service seal on their diploma. And there are some examples provided in the handbook of pre-approved community service organizations that they can choose from. And these are not in any way limited. If students have another organization that they would like to take to their counselor and or principal for pre-approval, they can do that as well. And then there's some examples and non-examples. So volunteering at their church, working various activities such as food drives, clothing drives, and youth groups, or volunteering 10 hours at Summa Hospital or 10 hours at the Summit County Animal Shelter. They could combine those hours from various experiences. We would expect while our students are completing different types of courses throughout high school, that there would be those opportunities where they would earn hours for volunteerism, whether it was, doing a reading group with younger students or whatever it might be in their community, that many different types of courses and within their pathways would give them those opportunities to volunteer. So students could pull their hours. And then again, we always gave them some non-examples of what you can't do. So just to make it clear, chores around the home or mowing your yard are not exactly volunteer hours. Those are just chores and all expected of being a regular old teenager. And then there's some spaces in here you're going to see for just holding the spaces for those logs and forms for kids to keep track of their hours or be able to scan it and add it to career cruising. We're working on that integration piece now, where students will have sort of this open assignment area where they'll be able to add and log their hours throughout high school. The second local seal is the student engagement seal. And this one comes into, and I'm going to ask Ms. Gijic to pop in, because there are units and seasons or years in which we're expecting students to participate in order to earn this. And units or seasons or years can be defined differently depending on the type of club or organization or sport that a kid is involved in. So they might be in football for the season, they might be in orchestra for the year or choir for the year. So those all count as units, and students must earn 2 units of some sort of student engagement in order to qualify for this seal. So anytime, again, during their high school career, they could be looking at ways to earn at least 2 units. So things that are outside those approved curricular or extracurricular activities that students can take advantage of. Did I say that correctly in the units and years and semesters?
Perfectly.
Okay. So you can imagine there's a lot of variety. Kids take advantage of a lot of things, and students all throughout their high school are doing tons of different sorts of activities. Some of them may be shorter and more robust, and some of them may be more long-term. And in either way, those individual and unique units, as long as they can demonstrate and prove that they have been validated to participate in at least 2, either by the teacher, the mentor, the coach, whoever's leading that programming, would sign off on a validation for them. And again, this material, these logs, this evidence that they've completed it would be in their career cruising platform. Once they've hit that marker, the office would be notified, and they would be then approved upon graduation to have this seal added as well. So I know you might have noticed that some kids are going to wind up with a lot more than just 2 seals. So 2 is the minimum. But when you start to look at them, you're going to have lots of kids that probably could earn 9, 10, maybe 12 of the seals. I don't know. Have a very full diploma full of seals and badges. And then the last one is on the right screen, the Fine and Performing Arts seal. And just like the student engagement seal, it's looking for 2 units of engagement and a unit of fine arts. So that could be a season of an extracurricular activity that's equal to 1 unit toward the seal, or participating in a fine or performing arts, curricular or extracurricular activity to count towards the seal. And lots of our students participate in, seasons and events in school, in music and arts, whether it's performing arts, fine arts, choir, music, band, marching band, all of those things that all of those students would qualify for, and earning those units towards this fine or performing arts seal. And in much the same way as the others, they complete those units, they get it verified by that teacher or mentor or coach who was leading that programming. And the same way, it's all that communication goes right into their career cruising software. So students who are interested in this particular seal would read about those details, grab the forms and the resources they need. They're going to work closely with their counselors to make sure they're making progress on the seals that they want to attain, and that we've collected all that evidence back that they've satisfied any criteria towards it. And that's the handbook as it is so far for the local SEALs. I did include just their path to graduate commitment form, which has been updated so far. It's a yearly sort of check-in or even a half-year check-in with students to see where they're at in their graduation pathways. The counselors work with each student to complete this form and just so they understand where they're at in that credits and competency and SEALs. And the SEALs at the bottom have been updated with all the links from the state that has the more deep dive guidance around what I would need to do to earn any of those SEALs. And then we'll create a similar, guidance document just if I want to look at what those individual SEALs are at the local level so that they'll know exactly what they need to do to complete those as well. Any questions? Or Ms. Gijic, Ms. Woods, did I miss anything?
Yeah.
Are there any questions? But does that all look familiar? And do you remember back in the springtime when where we were headed is pretty similar to what I think we talked about in the spring when we met, that we were talking about these 3 local SEALs and trying to kind of hone in on what types of experiences kids can have. You can see how when you look at the student engagement and the community service and the fine arts, but especially the community service and the student engagement, all of that is wrapped into our College and Career Academy strategies and initiatives. So I feel like this was a perfect opportunity to sort of formalize that we want students engaged in the extracurricular. We created the Leaders of Campus Support at the high school to expand our extracurricular and that level of engagement. So we're pleased that now they'll get credit and kind of make this more tangible for students to work towards. And then the community service obviously fits beautifully with our college and career academies. So if there's any questions, feedback at this point where we are, we're ready to officially launch this with all of our students and our counselors to begin having students take a look at these SEALs and identify which ones they want to start working towards. And I think these materials will be a perfect way to do that. And then, on that one form that everything is together. And thankfully we have Career Cruising where we can capture all this evidence. We don't have to turn anything formally into the state. All we have to do, the state documentation is just a yes or no, but we just have to keep on file here in case we're ever audited or anything like that to make sure we have the evidence. So all of that will be stored in Career Cruising. All right, Mrs. Ebright, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your work on this.
Thank you.
Great
Yeah,
details,
thank you
guys.
so
Thanks
much.
for filling them. Thanks for filling in all the blanks. Looks great.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Gijic, I'll let you then on our agenda at the bottom under updates, there's one that's called Teaching and Learning Update. And we actually have 3 awards that we are pleased that we have been awarded in 3 different areas, but we'd like to talk to you about, we could bring it here and see if there's a way for us to share it with the rest of the board. When we were face to face, if you remember in past years, we'll bring, like all 30 people sometimes for awards, and we'll bring them through and have them stand around the tables. We're not quite able to do that as well, but maybe we could think creatively about how to at least showcase this either during our instructional policy committee reports. So Mrs. Gijic, why don't you explain what the 3 awards are, and then we can talk through what to do with this information.
So there is a summary sheet for instructional policy updates, and it has 3 paragraphs, one for each of the awards, and then links at the bottom. May I present my screen?
Sure,
Is that all right?
yes.
So that way you'll know what I'm talking about. So this update, the first award is the champion.
Make it a little bit bigger for
Districts.
our eyes.
Thank
Right, thank you.
First is the Champion District Seal from EverFi. And EverFi handles we use them for our financial literacy requirement. And in order to qualify for this seal, you have to have efficacy-based programs that support the research. You have to have well-trained staff. They have to certify that we have this, and then they give us the champion seal. So because we have used their program in a way that they deem is appropriate within our embedded curriculum, we have received their champion award. And it's a seal that comes to the district for our financial literacy and also for our opioid instruction embedded in our health classes. So 2 areas through EverFi, the champion seal. Okay. Then,
Do you remember when we received statewide recognition? I can't remember what library. Were we at Firestone or
Firestone.
Library? Firestone with
Rachel's Angels.
Angels, and EverFi came and we had a big celebration. I think we had the mayor there. We had quite a bit of attention that day. So this is another endorsement of the program and how we've embedded EverFi, the 2 areas that Mrs. Jijic just mentioned, into our curriculum. So it's exciting to see that continued support for this.
And then the second area is the Governor's Award for the Thomas Edison Award for STEM. Generally at Teacher of the Year, you would see a trifold on the table with all of the teachers who won the Governor's Award and the buildings who won the Governor's Award. So we wanted you to know that for the 18th year in a row, Akron has received the Governor's Award. And some of our teachers and buildings have received this longer than others. So Bookdale, their 7th year in a row receiving it. East, 14 years in a row. So we think it's impressive. We think that in Teacher of the Year being so different this past year, we may have missed the opportunity to share the Governor's Award with you and to allow you to recognize the buildings that for years have continued the rich Akron Public School tradition of STEM innovation in science. So we wanted to be sure that you knew that, and we know you do, but you have so many things as a board member that this one, 18 years in some of our buildings, East 14 years, Miller South 15 years. It's amazing. And mostly middle and high, because that's where our science fair traditionally falls, into our middle schools and our high schools. Okay? So any questions about the Thomas Edison Awards? And then the last one is the Insight into Diversity magazine has given our district, our superintendent, the Insight into Diversity Award. And it's pretty amazing if you can see this, if that's okay for you to look at. So this is to the district and to this superintendent and this board, because you are the ones who approve HIP year after year and now have transitioned it into our College and Career Academy work. So to receive the Insight into Diversity Award is impressive. And we wanted you to know that. And our superintendent will never say, this is what we've been awarded, because he's not that personality. And neither is Dr. McWilliams-Woods, nor is Dr. Halassa. But the three of them, along with Rachel, as this is walking into College and Career Academy now, really should be very proud of this Diversity Magazine's 2020 Inspiring Programs in STEM Diversity Award. So this one is really unusual. EverFi Champion Seal, we probably earned that several years in a row. Governor's Award, we're really happy and proud of it, but this one is a one-time designation that we are very proud of too. So thank you for letting me update you.
Yeah, so isn't that, it's nice to have all this good news all happening at the same time, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the opportunity in this different environment to kind of showcase those. So what, Mrs. Mansfield and Mrs. McKittrick, what do you think would be the best way? We could just leave it here for instructional policy and have you all excited for the three, awards and the summary. We could bring it into the board meeting through our instructional policy committee, or any other idea that you would like to share, and we could brainstorm what to do with this, especially in this remote environment for our meetings.
I would love to see it highlighted some way more than just instructional policy report in the meeting. I think it needs to be bigger than that. These are three big things that shouldn't just be, okay, in our instructional policy report, 1, 2, 3, and move on. I think it needs to be much bigger.
I thought it was really kind of fun, for lack of a better phrase, to have when we did the teachers emeritus and we had all the teachers all in the squares too with us, and they got to pop on, even if they didn't speak, just because it might take a long time. If we got to see everybody who could show up and at least, highlight their face when it was their turn to be talked about, or just as we read the list, have all their faces pop up. I just think that that was it was enjoyable. That's always a good meeting. It's much better when we're in person, of course, and we can see and shake hands and take pictures. But just getting to see their face for a few minutes and hear their story while we told their story, or I don't know, just having them all there was kind of nice. It just felt kind of all gathered around together. So maybe we could do something, invite them. And again, even if they don't have time to talk, they at least get seen.
Sure. And we could, if you're interested in doing it that way, instead of through the instructional policy, we could spread it out so that we do one, we don't have to do all three one night. We could do one, just spread it out at the next board meetings. I could work with President Bravo to figure out a schedule to piece these into the beginning, just as part of a showcase. And we could invite the Edison Award is a ton of teachers. So we probably couldn't do that, but maybe we could invite the schools, like a representative from each school that has been the long standing, because I think it's 19 different schools earned it this year, but the ones that have that multi-year, we could invite a participant there to sort of represent all the educators from across the city that earned that award.
I like the idea of doing it in 3 separate meetings. That way each group gets to be highlighted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Okay. All right, we will do that. Since Mr. Bravo's not saying anything, we'll assume that's a yes from him, and we can move forward. And during scrimmage, we can map out a schedule with the superintendent to pick some meetings that would be good to showcase that. All right, Mrs. Gijic, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You have a good night. All right, so going back then in our agenda, why don't we take a look at what's coming to board? I pulled a few items just to make sure you understood kind of what they were about and how it's supporting our larger strategic work. Under the consent agenda, we have very good news that about funds that it's called Expanding Opportunities for Each Child grant. That it started out with ODE as a competitive grant, and then because of COVID and all the disruptions, this was funding that was supposed to come last year. They held off and they retooled it as a non-competitive grant, but we still had to apply and demonstrate how we were going to use the funds before they awarded it. But the funding, I think you'll all be pleased to hear that the funding is really to support our priority and focus schools in expanding the higher level coursework, like the advanced placement coursework, the dual enrollment coursework, IB, if we wanted to put the funding there. It can support programs like AVID that we've talked about in instructional policy. That is the program that the students actually have a course and a mentor that support underrepresented students taking those higher level courses throughout their high school years. And we have expanded AVID across. Our goal is to get it in every high school and every middle school. And this year we're expanding more into middle schools. So that the funds can be used for those types of strategies as well. So it's specifically pushing for higher level courses and then programming to support students in taking those higher level courses. Another part of, and it's not just coursework for other districts, it's also expanding career opportunities. We've already done that, obviously. So that's why we're focusing the funding for the higher level courses, since we've already, all of our students are already taking all the career courses. We've done all of that redesign. The other thing that it can support is making sure that we have personalized plans for each student, which ties exactly into the graduation discussion we were having. So we can use the funds to support making sure that every student has a very clear direction and pathway with the coursework that they want to take based on those college and career goals, but then also any kind of supports that they need to achieve that. And that's called personalized learning, so that it's not just a large scale kind of programming, that you're really tailoring each, all of the services directly to each individual student. So it's wonderful funding, $267,000 that's coming, that will hit right away this year, that we can use for that purpose. And that all goes through Kenya Harrington's department through school improvement. That's how the money gets funneled. Do you have any questions about that? And then I just wanted to make sure I talked a little bit about this Edmentum under business affairs. There's an Edmentum item for $75,000. This Edmentum is who we use with our APS online program. And just to remind you, we've had, I actually don't remember exactly how many years we've had APS online, at least 6 or 7 years now, that we run our own 100% full-time digital school program for any family that wants 100% remote. And so here we are, where all of our students are remote, but we've always had this APS online program for any family in past years who wanted to be 100% remote. We still have that program, even though we're all remote. We still have that program, and it serves students who have always been remote and wanted to continue remote. And then the way we designed our remote learning during this COVID time is we're using all of our own teachers and our own curriculum for that delivery. Through Edmentum, we contract with the provider called Edmentum, Ed Options Academy, it's called, that they actually provide the curriculum and they provide the instruction. We provide more the mentoring and the instructional support kind of on the ground to help the students if they need it to come in for some additional tutoring. We didn't want to design our online program to be that we never see the kids. So the APS online students come in on a regular basis and get mentoring and any kind of academic supports face-to-face as needed. So this contract that's going to board is for our K-5. We used to use, or we still do have a contract with Lincoln Learning for our elementary students. And then we used Edmentum for grades 6 through 12. This year, we decided to also contract with Edmentum for K-5 and give the parents choice whether they wanted to stay with Lincoln Learning or they wanted to go with Edmentum. The advantage of Edmentum is then if you stay with it, you've got the same platform that you get used to all the way through middle school and high school too. So this is $75,000. It would support up to 30 students in this for elementary. Right now we have 8 students signed up through APS Online. And then we also use the Edmentum for our students that are in our alternative program, SOAR. So if they go there, they're also using Edmentum so that they get a digital academic setting there. But then we have teachers also on site that help support them. So it's kind of a combination. We don't have any students in that long-term alternative program right now since we're all remote. But if we come back site-based, then we would have students there. So any questions about APS Online and Edmentum? The contract for the secondary for 6 through 12 is separate than the K-5. We also, just so you know, if we ever got in a situation when we brought students back in a blended environment, if we ever needed, especially at the high school level, if we look at how many parents want remote and how many parents want site-based, Edmentum is also sort of a backup that if we ever got in a situation where we didn't have the perfect match of how many teachers needed for remote families that want to stay remote and how many teachers for the site-based blended, we always have APS Online is always there. And they're a fabulous partner with us, so we can always use them to fill in any kind of gaps that we may have.
I have a quick question. So
Yes.
I can't remember what you said the other one's called. I know Edmentum because that was the one that Teddy used when he was in APS Online, so I'm familiar with them. What's the other elementary one called? And will we continue to offer those, or are we just doing it kind of on an interim basis to ease people all into Edmentum?
We decided this year we would do both because once you start in a system, families, sometimes it's really hard to make a change. And the way the contracts work, and Lincoln Learning is the other provider. We only pay when a student enrolls. So we're not paying for seats that are just sitting there empty. So it's there available that if a family said, you know, I've been in Lincoln Learning and I want to stay in that, they can. But so far, the 8 families have chosen to shift over to the Edmentum.
Thank you.
Yeah, the other cool thing about APS Online that I always want to emphasize, because this is unique, that not a lot of districts who have separate digital programs or schools, we have set ours up, and that's all under the leadership of Tomiko Hatcher, who runs our specialty programs. The way we've set up our APS Online program, and the reason why we don't call it a school is because it is for 100% remote students. And it also supports the curriculum in our alternative programs. But it also can be, and Mrs. Mansfield, you're very familiar with this, any student who wants to take a course that either doesn't fit in their schedule or they want to go do an internship as part of their college and career academy, but they have this one course left over, or if they want to take an advanced course like a year 4 or year 5 in Chinese, and we don't offer that, then they can also go to APS Online just for that one course or for 2 courses. It is that flexible that we really want to see these APS Online courses as one more option in our course catalog that anybody can take. And if you think of how universities have made that shift, you go through their course catalogs, you will find courses that are strictly online courses. And that's how we would like to keep expanding and building, and seeing it just as one more menu choice that we have, and then let students tailor kind of in that personalized way their schedules.
Do you think that now that parents are more familiar with virtual learning, that might be considered more of an option as we're going forward? I mean, I know that we get into these conflicts all the time, right? Where, oh gosh, I need an English course. Now with high school, I would encourage them to do College Credit Plus, right? And do that for their English course or whatever, but it just doesn't fit because I want to take choir and orchestra and band and whatever, right? Engineering. So that they can do that with these classes. And do you think that maybe it'll help open it up a little bit?
I think there's no doubt that it will. I mean, if you think of everything that we've sort of blown up in terms of mindsets about this whole remote learning, and not just mindsets, but your own comfort level and your own, getting into your own rhythm and your own internal kind of motivation of schedules, and can you keep up with the coursework, all of that. We've been forced into it that some people never would have chosen this as an option, that I think it's opened the door. I hear every single day from teachers who say, this student struggled when we were face to face, and now he's flourishing or she's flourishing in this remote environment. And then we have the flip side, obviously, too, where some kids who flourished site-based are struggling remote. But I think for the students who are really experiencing it for the first time and feeling comfortable, they'll have so much more confidence to take an online course now. At one point, if you remember, Mrs. Mansfield, because I think it was a couple of years ago that we talked about it, instructional policy, and this might be a good time to revisit it again, that we would love to have every student have to take some online courses as part of their high school career, because colleges now, that's just so common, and trade schools, that's so common now, that I would hate to have us go back to not having every single student have some type of online experience in high school, so that they do learn all these different platforms and how to navigate an online course.
Even if they're doing it in their study hall, right? So like, even if they're doing it while they're at school, they don't have to be at home to do it. If they were in the cafeteria taking study hall, you can actually be taking that Chinese 5 class and moving ahead.
Yeah. So I think we need to keep thinking about that.
Interesting.
Mrs. McKittrick, were you starting to say something earlier?
If I was, I don't remember what it was. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we hit under the other agenda items, we hit the graduation seals. I also have under the other agenda items, the reopening teams, just to give you an update on our all of our shared leadership teams that helped us get to both the June 29th proposal. We officially call that our June 29th proposal that we gave you for the blended. And then the same teams helped us flip that all to remote to get us started. And that's over, it's about 60 to 70 people that have still committed that they're meeting every single week with these cross-section teams to make sure now they're shifting all their energy towards a proposal to bring to the board for a blended approach. And so what I have on here on the agenda is just the timeline. The first resolution that you passed for us to go remote was for the first 9 weeks. Officially, that 9 weeks is over on November 11th. So what we've done with the superintendent is look at that week of November 9th is that Monday, November 11th is a Wednesday. So that week of November 9th would be when we would look at, you will need to have some kind of action, either we're continuing the remote or we're switching to some type of blended approach. So when we backed that up then to look at where we needed to bring specific proposals, the goal is for the superintendent to share a proposal to the board at the October 12th board meeting, and then seek some type of decision then October 26th, and then potentially, if you so choose at that point, to look at what that instructional model would look like then that week of the November 9th, which officially ends that 9 weeks. So our teams have been meeting to look at a blended approach, at least to be able to give you that option. To see, if you remember back on our June 29th model was grades K to 2 was 4 or 5 days a week. And then 3rd through 8 was 2 days a week. And then the high school was also 2 days a week, but had that schedule that was more that the kids came in for projects on those 2 days versus a regular full schedule. And so all of the teams are back meeting. The last couple of weeks they started back, no longer talking about remote instruction. Now they've completely flipped to talking about what would that blended approach look like? Do we just brush off June 29th and bring that same exact model back? Or do they, now that we've done remote, do they want to tweak it at all and offer any other options to you on this schedule? You know, that definitely by October 12th, we'd want the superintendent to have some kind of formal proposal to bring to you. Does that pace and schedule sound okay? You know, that's, it's basically 3 weeks before that October 12th board meeting, 4 weeks before a decision then on October 26th. It's 7 weeks before the, not that I have these in my head, ingrained in my head, but 7 weeks before we would get to that week of November 9th, where the first 9 weeks ends.
Seems nicely paced to me. I think it's spot on.
Yeah.
There is an awful lot of push to know already. Maybe it's because we were so early coming out in July with the decision on what we were going to do in September. But I'm already getting a lot of, will you speculate on what you think is going to happen? Or, you know, getting a lot of push for, can you make how far in advance we make the announcement? And I've told them what you said, that you would really need to know at least 3 weeks ahead. So having some kind of timeline that at least we can point to would be really helpful. It is interesting to see that how Copley and Norton have both, I think Copley, did they go back today or did they go back next week? And Norton has announced they're going back in October full board also. So it's interesting to see with the numbers where they are. If they stay like this, there's probably going to be a lot more call for what are you going to do quickly as possible.
And we can, you know, from your perspective, and obviously from the president and the vice president, we can adjust the timeline based on what you all need and want. We just went with here, the resolution goes through this date. So now let's go backwards and track back. We would probably need, no matter what, we would need that solid month to be able to flip 21,000 students into a new model. And so, that kind of sense of the timeline, obviously we have almost all the details planned from the June 29th, and we continued obviously that planning after that, but we had a lot of the details figured out then. And I think we've, just like we've all said, every week you learn more about COVID and you learn more about prevention type strategies, and Deborah Folk and her team has been amazing. It's been incredibly helpful to have the sports teams coming, back and in full blown activity mode, because a lot of the protocols are obviously the same that we have to work through. And so that's been real helpful to learn through all of that process. So I'm real confident that we'll be ready for a blended approach. At least we'll know exactly what strategies we need to put in place. I think ultimately the board needs to just look at what data, and I think President Bravo said it in one of the meetings, on what is it that triggers your comfort level to be able to have students come back. If that's your focus for the next few weeks in terms of what you feel comfortable with in the data, then I think it makes the decision on the models, then that just sort of flows after that. Because the model, we decided we'll just design the model and then we can trigger it whenever you tell us you're ready, based on the criteria that you're looking for to feel confident that we can bring the students back. So if it's October, you want us to do it then. If it's November, if it's December, if it's January, based on the criteria that you're looking for. We are seeing, it's a kind of a mixed bag right now with Ohio 8. Some have not started talking about blended yet, that they're coming back blended, and Toledo announced that they're coming back blended in October. So we're seeing some of the Ohio 8s, and then some others haven't started talking about blended yet. And then you're more familiar with the county schools too. And we have a update. We try to keep up to date with the Ohio 8 and the Summit County on what everybody's doing. It changes week to week, but we have a spreadsheet where we try to keep track of that so that we just keep a pulse on all of our neighboring districts. And obviously the Ohio 8 is also real important to us. Okay, so that is the update on our reopening teams. The only other thing on the agenda was your regular updates, the Family Resource Center, IPS, and the College and Career Academies of Akron, and you can take a look at those. There's nothing specifically that I needed to share with you on those. But as always, you can pull items out if you want to during the board meeting to highlight anything. I am real pleased with the College and Career Academies. We just went through our evaluation review meeting with the Martha Holden Jennings grant, who's funding all of our middle school work. And they send an evaluator to meet with us to see how we're doing with everything that we said we were going to do in the grant. And they were very pleased how we've been able to adjust strategies to this virtual environment so that we don't stop at all of our progress, that we've really been able to keep like virtual essential experiences for our elementary. We're doing virtual career exploration at the middle school level. Like, we've been able to flip everything due to their grant funds. So that's been exciting. So they were very pleased, and we'll get that report soon that I'll share it with you, but they were very pleased on our progress.
Hey, Ellen, I can't for the life of me find our agenda shared with me. I looked on the drive and it's not in my calendar. It's usually in my calendar or it's shared with me and I can't find it today. I don't know. I looked through my deleted. I don't know.
Let me share it with you now.
Okay.
I will definitely share it with you. And then it is always now, since we shifted over to the board docs.
It's in board docs. That I was
It's
like, that was the
always
one place that I always looked. And today it was just not, the bells were not going off in my head.
Oh, that's okay. I still always have to pull up my Google Docs to review during the meeting. And I have board docs open too, but it's just so much easier for me to see it in our normal agenda style. I just emailed it to you.
Thanks.
But
I forgot to look there. I looked through everything else. I'm in my calendar. I'm in all the places we used to put it and didn't go there. Thank you.
This is my executive assistant and Ryan Pendleton trying to have us always use board docs for everything so that the public can also, have access to everything since our meetings are all live now. All right. Is there anything else that you have questions about or that has been raised since the last time we talked?
No, nothing for me. Thank you.
All right. Well, very good. Then thank you very much. And we will see you. Yeah, I see you're getting ribbed by Mr. Bravo there. Yeah. We will.
That kind of day. Too much technology. I've got computers stacked on computers and
We will see you on Monday then at our regular board meeting. Okay.
thanks everybody.
All right. Thank you.
everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.